say summary version of the agenda and reports are available at this meeting, and the Cabinet have received and read those reports also, and full reports are available on our City Council website. Just for the record, agenda item 13, Building Practical Practice Capital Programme Budget Allocation 1920, is included under APR 15 as a general exception, as it is a key decision, but was listed on the forward plan as non-key. I confirm that the Chair of OSM has been notified. And agenda item 15, Hengrove Park, delivery of new housing development, contains an exempt appendix. Exempt appendices contain information that is commercially sensitive or legally privileged. And I confirm that Cabinet members and the members of the relevant Scrutiny Commission have had access to this ahead of the meeting. Fantastic. Okay, can I draw your attention, please, sir, to the emergency evacuation procedure outlined on the agenda, currently being displayed on the screen. And as ever, all Cabinet members, councillors, and anyone else speaking to the microphone so you can be heard clearly on the webcast. Agenda item 2, public forum. Again, a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time of the relevant agenda item being discussed. Questions received are contained in the public forum pack and will also be displayed on the screen at the appropriate time in the meeting, and I will give a reply or I will ask the relevant Cabinet member to respond. Agenda item 13, apologies for absence, with 2 apologies, Helen Godwin and Nicola Beach. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Can I ask any Cabinet members to declare any interest they have in relation to today's agenda? None? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There are none on this occasion. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions. There are none on this occasion. Agenda item 7, chair's business. This is my opportunity to make any announcements. I'd just like to acknowledge on Sunday, both Cleo Lake and I completed the Bristol 10K. And it's probably the first time in Bristol's history that 2 sitting mayors have completed the same Bristol 10K. So that should be recorded in the annals of Bristol achievements. Just in case you didn't know, I did the Tough Mudder on Saturday as well. Kind of two epic challenges 2 days in a row. I got a scar, but 2 epic challenges 2 days in a row. So I think that's something also worth noting. Agenda item 8, Helen, coming to you now, Helen, Councillor Holland, Better Lives at Home proposals and progress.
Great, and congratulations on your run, and I do hope you beat the Lord Mayor. Is that your time of better? Anyway, well, I'm really pleased to be bringing this report this afternoon. It's an update, if you feel that it isn't long since I brought the last one, that was in October. But we've been working very hard since then. The context of this is, as you all know, but for those people listening at home, one of the things that Terry just walked in at the right moment, when Terry and I, when we were first got these jobs, was that we recognised that Bristol was placing far too many people in residential and nursing homes, and paying too much, by the way, for those places. So we're trying to address that in all sorts of ways, knowing that the desired outcome for most people, if they're thinking about where they want to end up or where they want to spend their lives when they need a bit more support, isn't in residential and nursing homes. It's to carry on being independent in their own home, but they might need support to be able to do that. And so the important thing about this report is that it completely tips the balance, and we need to do more of it and more quickly to make sure that we've got that offer right, so that there are options for people and that we really celebrate those options so that people see what there is available. Since that report in October, the places at Stoke Gifford retirement village that we've taken alongside South Gloucestershire, those that's been opened, and we've almost nominated all of the places into that. And the development in Stockwood that Bristol Charities is responsible for, we've got all the nomination rights into that as well. But one of the things that I've been going round as I've been round places is to recognise that we need much more of it, so that there are developments like this in every community. Because the big important thing about keeping independence is for people to stay somewhere that they're familiar with, if that's possible, and if it's what they want, so that they're using the same shops, post office, still going to the same doctor, church, whatever it is that makes their lives, you know, worth living and can stay engaged with their communities. That sounds as if I'm talking particularly about older people, but the focus of this report is also that similarly for adults of working age, we've got too many people in very costly and inappropriate settings. And again, most young people with support needs who are in school at the moment are being taught about and are being skilled up for being able to live as independently as possible. And actually, if you put people in residential settings, it de-skills them rather than gives them those skills. And what we've seen with people with all sorts of abilities is that by empowering them to live as independent a life as they possibly can, all sorts of other benefits flow from that. They find out that they can go and volunteer in local community groups, in local shops. They become part of the community is looking out for them. All those things flow, and it is a much better outcome. And if you talk to parents of those young people, although they're concerned, and naturally people have more concern probably about their children if they have special needs of any kind, but when they realise by talking to other parents and other families whose young people are in supported living, they can see that that's a much better option. There's a financial context to this because, of course, these are also better but cheaper options. And as Clive is there nodding away at me, you know, you were right, and it's something we would have liked to have done anyway, but to put the budget amendment giving additional resource to this so that we can acquire properties and not just wait for the new builds, good though those are, and we definitely want to do more of that. So it's very much a good news report. We're looking for all sorts of other options to be able to deliver these in some of the other major developments, like Hengrove Park. If we can do it there, that would be fantastic as well. And you know, it does exactly what it says on the tin, which is to provide better lives at home for our residents. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Helen. I don't think the work done by yourself and Terry and the team and with Jackie around adult social care is appreciated enough. I think people do appreciate it, but I think that the scale of the challenge taken on in the face of the crisis that's facing other authorities around the country, it's hard because there's no crisis. You know, we haven't had any major incidents. People haven't really got their head around it, actually. So thank you. We have two councillor questions. The first is from Councillor Don Alexander. Don?
Yes, I'd like to thank the officers and Helen for this strategy and this report. In Sea Mills, we're looking forward to having a facility for young adults, and I'd like to ask that the co-production is really not just a theoretical exercise, but a very genuine one for us. I know that the community want to be involved. We want to meet the young and not so young people coming and involve them in the things that we're doing. And especially with the 100th anniversary of the estate coming up, it would be great to have them there as part of that and to make this a real, genuine thing. And there was a question, but I actually did get an answer very kindly from officers today saying, yep, let's have meetings and everything. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, and it's great.
Well, thank you and Joe, for your interest in that development. And it does exactly what I've just been saying, that it's a development in Sea Mills where people, they won't necessarily have a connection when they come to Sea Mills. Some might, but being part of the community, that neighbourliness, finding out who those people are, what their interests are, how they can contribute to the community, I think it's a win-win. And, you know, hopefully it also means that there's a resource, there'll be a resource that you can tap about finding out what disabled people think about facilities in the community. You can use them as well in all sorts of ways. And if there's any way in which I can facilitate that, then great. And hopefully we'll be talking to community development as well about, you know, preparing the community for that project.
Thank you, Don, Helen. Next up, we have a question from Councillor Clive Stevens.
Thank you. I support this paper. It's very good, and I'd also like to compliment the author. It's very well written, and especially the joined-up thinking. It illustrates the importance of considering SEND children and their long-term care and integration into the community wherever possible. Not only does looking after SEND children help their classmates, teachers and the parents, but in moving them through to adulthood and helping some of them live independently can save roughly the £4 million cost per person that's through their adult years. I had 3 concerns which are in my written preamble, so there's no need to go through them. And my question was about setting up some form of working group to try and put more effort in the joined-up thinking between SEND children, diagnosis, going through preparing for adulthood, and then adult social care. So over to you, Helen.
Thanks for the question, Clive, and for your endorsement of our strategy. That's always good to hear. I think that we've had a quick chat about this, and as I said to you downstairs an hour ago, that there's probably more happening on this than we know. It's you know, practitioners will be having those links, and we recognise that there is more that we can do in getting the transition stage right, and the preparing for adulthood work is part of that. What we were going to suggest is that you put this in as a proposal because you've got the scrutiny work programme planning day coming up, and find out if there's other support from other members who want to look at this. Because, you know, we don't want to tell scrutiny what it is that they need to look at, but if you feel strongly enough that this is an area and you think that there are other members who will be interested, because we don't want to be, you know that resources are very stretched, and we don't want to be resourcing a group that, you know, where the work could be being done elsewhere, or that isn't something that's got wide support amongst the membership. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, and we work with you at whatever the outcome of that is.
I'd be delighted to do that, even though I feel like it's been batted back, but it was good tactic. I was a salesman in an earlier career, so I'll do my best to get people enthused. My supplementary is, I think I read in this report that the new properties are going to go under the HRA, the council housing. Is that correct? If it is correct, I'm just worried about the issue about right to buy. Maybe I need to reread the report and check.
I'm looking at Paul.
No, that's fine. Cancel that if Paul's saying they're not under HRA.
Right. Did you hear that, Clive?
No.
Go on, sir.
Thank you. Say it again. I'm not aware, I don't think that any of this property will go into the HRA, although I want to make a comment in a minute. But the right to buy doesn't apply to housing that's specifically for elder people or some other form of supported accommodation.
Is that okay, Clive? Okay, can I ask you a question? What did you sell?
Last time you did that, you harangued me on the arena, so if it's not on the arena, that's okay.
I just asked you how much it cost to build it after your motion. No, what did you sell? I'm intrigued. When you were a salesperson, what did you sell?
Well, you sell yourself, really, the various different types of products, because if you sell yourself, people trust you. I run my own business still now, and you're sort of selling yourself.
All right, it was a straightforward question. What was the product that was consumed?
What was the product?
Yes.
I've done various products, industrial paints, radiation measuring equipment in the health service.
Right. It was
all
just
sorts of stuff.
All right, it was just a question of interest. That was the right question of interest.
I'll send you a statement.
Well,
you can have a week to answer.
All the paper in the world, but I don't think Clive would. Okay. So, Helen, can I hand back to you now to take the decision, which I thought... Anna, sorry. Yeah.
Just wanted to thank Helen and officers for the work on this. It's been brilliant working with you, Helen, and it's sort of fairly close as our cabinet roles overlap quite a lot, and I've learned a lot from you. I mean, I think that... can't remember which famous person said this. I'll pretend it was one of us saying it. But I think we could sort of always be judged by how we treat the most vulnerable people in our society. And it's really important to bear in mind that many of the people that this will affect won't have a voice, won't be able to perhaps, attend a meeting or feel as represented as they should be. And it's these stories that don't always get picked up by the press, but are really, really important, because it's often people that could easily be forgotten about if aren't well looked after. And it's absolutely how we would all want members of our family and ourselves to be treated so well when we're in vulnerable situations. Just on Clive's point about picking up, connecting these sort of pieces of work. I think I've sort of touched on this with you before, Clive, but we've been really keen to have the Bristol Works programme, which is our bespoke work experience programme for children to have experience of work and be skilled, and that has already been rolled out to a number of our special schools, and we're really committed to ensuring that it's the sort of version of the programme we're using is called Bristol Works for Everyone, and it should exactly do that. So it's very important that our young people, whatever their background, whatever their additional needs they might have, are able to contribute to society and feel completely valued by that, but are also given the opportunity to do that. And I think as a city, everybody in and outside the council has a responsibility to say these are all our young adults and our young people. And we've sort of really pushed back on businesses offering, asking people to take more young people into work experience. And I think that could be something which could link up with this piece of work potentially as well when we come on to that. But thanks very much to Helen and officers. I know there's a huge amount of work gone into that, and you only have to look at the press at the moment to see how challenging it is in terms of our finance from central government. So well done for pushing forward, and although being robust about that, not letting people who are very vulnerable fall by the wayside. So I really appreciate your work on it.
Paul?
Yes, unsurprisingly, I'm also supporting this report. And I mean, I think anybody who walks round one of the extra care schemes and then goes round some of our sheltered housing would see quite a stark difference in the quality of accommodation. And I think as we bring more extra care housing forward, as is suggested in the report, and also some innovative forms, for instance, intergenerational extra care housing, as we're looking at on 3 locations within Bristol at the moment, it does, I think, throw into stark contrast the quality of our 1970s style sheltered housing that we've got around the city. And we had reports at the last full council meeting from Ruth Pickerskill and from other councillors, I think, about some of the problems that we now have in some of that accommodation. And part of what we will be doing is reviewing that accommodation. I think a lot of it is getting to the stage where in the future it will not be a sort of suitable option for over 50s, or certainly over 60s and over 70s. And so we can start to repurpose that accommodation or to rebuild on some of those sites something which is either more attuned to modern standards or for a different client group altogether. So I thank Helen for bringing this here. I think we would want our parents to live in very good quality accommodation if they were in those situations. And I've certainly been round the scheme that we jointly procured with South Gloucestershire, and the quality of that is exemplary. And I would recommend any member of this council or the millions watching at home to go and have a look round the Stoke Gifford site.
Thank you, Paul. Any other councillors like to comment? Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Helen, to take the decision, which I fully support.
Thanks very much, Marvin. So in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the consultation responses and equalities impact assessment in the report. And in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. So let's move on to agenda item 9, technology-enabled care service, Better Lives programme. This is with you again, Helen.
Okay, well, this again is a good news report, and I want to start off by saying what this isn't. It isn't about gizmos, robots, anything else technological replacing that personal care, which is so important in people's lives. So part of the Better Lives programme, the use of technology-enabled care, which I'll call TEC from now on, as part of a wider package of care, has been shown to support citizens to live independently for longer within their own communities and improve their well-being. And this can lead to a reduction in the number of adults spending lengthy periods of time in residential or nursing homes, which is a better solution for our residents and makes better use of care workers' time, and also reduces pressure on the local health budgets, in other words, for us as well as for the NHS. Our current tech system is a bit fragmented. Staff aren't always aware of the range of products that there are on offer, and they may not prescribe the right tech solution for an individual's situation. Our uptake of tech solutions has been a bit behind other comparable local authorities, if we're honest. And that's a pity, given Bristol's position as the home of so many digital companies and the rest of it. And I'd like to be able to work with those companies to be able to increase the use of tech. So this is about a new service model, and the new model brings together all the existing tech activity within the City Council into a single service or hub, and combines the service with the accessible home service. And this will mean that practitioners will refer into the service when they think that there's a tech solution for people's particular situations. And they'll look for solutions that improve people's lives, enabling them to remain independent. And the professionals within the tech service will perform an assessment to choose equipment that meets the residents' needs. We've learnt from other local authorities who have seen large increases. So what kind of thing do we mean by this? Well, for example, we've got people already who are being provided with sensors, so that if there's somebody who's at risk of falling, the sensors will alert either care workers or medical people or other family members to the fact that people have fallen. We use medication dispensers and reminders for people living with dementia. And again, like Paul says about visiting the Stoke Gifford home, if you see this tech in use, it really is incredible, the benefit that it can make to people's lives. We know that we've already got Careline that allows people to continue to live on their own, but have got help at the touch of a button. So it's a really exciting time because there's so many new products coming onto the market, and things even like Alexa that people use at home. If you see that in a care context, it really is life-changing. And there's an app called Brain in Hand, which is an app for people with autism or learning difficulty can download onto their smartphone, and that helps them with coping strategies if they get into a stressful situation. And as I said, with so many tech innovations and companies based in Bristol, we really need to get up to speed and be like, you know, one of the leaders rather than a follower in this. And Hampshire are one of the authorities where I've seen what they do, and they've really been able to make very, very good use of it and supporting thousands of people to live independently. So it's a win-win if we do it, because we'll get better outcomes for citizens and it'll be a lower cost for the council. But as I've said, I started with this and I'll finish with it, this does not replace personal care. It's about actually meaning that the personal care that people have can be a better interaction, because some of the mundane things that care workers sometimes have to do can be replaced. Those can be replaced by tech solutions. And so hopefully it will mean that when care workers have their visits, that those will be much better interactions and much more valuable for the person, because they're not just having to check that meds have been taken and so on. So it's very good news, and I think it's very exciting.
Thank you so very much again, Helen. Now we have one councillor question. This is from Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. So the adult social care supporter here from the opposition benches. I did check for the previous one. It is proposed to go in the HRA, but Councillor Smith gave a good answer. So on this one, I support it a great deal. The scope is what worries me. It's very wide, very comprehensive, and this is my concern, which I'm going to have to voice. I wonder about our IT's ability to deliver, given all the other pressures as well. I've also picked up that the tablets that you in Cabinet approved must be over 12 months ago now, still haven't been implemented. So I'm really concerned, and I'm going to give either Helen or Craig the chance to assure me that this is all going to happen and be de-risked.
So I think, and the iPads are part of the point actually. So we're going through an epic transformation program within the council, an ICT transformation program, and so as that sort of solution is being, that platform is being designed, inevitably we've had to rethink some of the things that we had planned in the past, so that the iPads being case in point. That said, we've put a number of mitigating actions in the proposals here. I can list them to you if you'd like me to. So we've got 15 days of solution architect to deliver the detailed requirements. There's a checkpoint review to make sure that it fits within the ICT program and the future landscape. The one-off costs for transformation include estimation of ICT transformation expenditure, and they're conservative, so we're fairly comfortable that they'll come in under that cost actually. And to ensure that the service is supported on launch, the technology environment work package within the implementation project will also redevelop the current ICT solutions to support the service on launch. So this means that staff will have easy to make referrals into the service and provide the basis for tracking the financial and non-financial benefits of the change.
Clive?
Thank you. I'll listen to that on the video later and then email you if I've got any further questions.
If that's easier, yeah.
Okay. Any other Cabinet members to comment on this? Okay, well, let me hand back to you then, Helen, to take the decision which I support.
Thanks very much, Marvin. So in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the consultation responses and equalities impact assessment in the report, and in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Helen. Agenda item 10, library technology replacement and upgrade. And Asha, you get the chance to talk about this investment in our library infrastructure.
Yes, I do. Thank you. The report is seeking approval for the procurement of the replacement self-service kiosks and the associated equipment and maintenance contract. So just to give you some background, Our self-service kiosks are in their twilight period and we need to replace them. Over the past 7 years, we have increased our self-service offering across a number of libraries in the city, giving the public greater access to library services via extended access solutions, free public computers, and booking systems, as well as the self-service kiosks. This increase in self-service has also helped to contribute towards reducing our annual running costs at around £220,000 per annum. Last October, the Cabinet agreed to undertake a review into our library technology to look at how the library service systems and technology contracts are working and are fit for purpose, and we want to ensure that they're resilient and sustainable going forward. So why do we need to invest? Well, the technology review that was undertaken in October identified that our self-service kiosks and supporting equipment, which I said was purchased over 7 years ago, are considered to be end of life and they require replacement. The implications of being end of life are as follows. So from January 2020, the self-service kiosks that run on Windows 7 will become unsupported, and this will increase the Council's IT security risks. Between now and January 2020, the Council will be upgrading all our library desktop computers to Windows 10. The current equipment will not be compatible, making it impossible to tag new books, therefore impacting on our core library service delivery. From December 2020, the chip and PIN devices within the current kiosks won't meet new financial security standards, which means that it won't be possible for library users to pay via card. And the 3 libraries with extended access won't work out of hours, given these are connected to the kiosks and are dependent on them working. And some of the chip and PIN modules have already begun to fail and are unrepairable. So there is an increasing risk of more kiosks breaking down, meaning that there will be more time out of use, waiting to be fixed, more costs involved in fixing, and in some cases, the inability to fix or even replace the parts. Finally, the support and maintenance contract will be out of contract, so we need to ensure that it complies with procurement. So what's being proposed? Well, 35 new portable kiosks are to be purchased and the old ones will be removed. Where required, other supporting equipment will also be replaced with new versions to meet new technological and financial security requirements. And this includes replacing the 60 tagging stations to comply with new Windows 10 staff computers. The project will be overseen by our internal governance and governance controls via the Commissioning and Procurement Group, and of course our Corporate Leadership Board. So why is this decision needed? Well, we are required to progress with the purchase given the cost associated, and the expected costs of implementing and subsequently supporting the self-service kiosks are estimated to be £705,000 over 7 years. And again, that equipment is expected to last approximately 5 to 7 years. Based on current estimates, these can all be met within our existing capital and revenue budgets. We've undertaken an equalities impact assessment and we've identified no negative impacts on equalities groups and communities. The new units will have larger screens and will be more streamlined. The self-service kiosk will provide the option for contactless payment as well as chip and PIN and coin. Wi-Fi login users can use their own devices to access Wi-Fi provision, and this will include the users who own accessible equipment. Wi-Fi printing, as with login, will also benefit all of our citizens who wish to print material in our libraries. And the existing supplier explicitly will comply with accessibility requirements. So there we have it. We need to upgrade and invest in our library technology, and hopefully you'll agree with me that it will be money well spent over the next 5 to 7 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Asha. So we've got 2 statements and 2 questions. First, I'll take the statements. Oliver Fortune.
So firstly, I agree that investment is needed in upgrading the technology in the library. However, my concern is that the corporate strategy's aim to reduce the size of the council to work effectively as a smaller organisation will cause even more damage to a nation already suffering because the state has been shrunk and privatised by politicians. I'm grateful that you've kept all our libraries funded till 2020, but I'm genuinely worried about the journey we're all being taken on. As our city grows and gets older, we will need more council services and people will need more jobs, not fewer, which is basically what the corporate strategy promises. Higher council tax in exchange for fewer services and fewer jobs within the council. I recently borrowed The Drunkard by Emile Zola from Libraries West, an online service that gets next to no promotion from the council. Frankly, I find it heartbreaking that a party founded off the back of a struggle for basic workers' rights in 21st century Bristol is committed to the same austerity agenda that empowered a few and caused misery, hunger and ill health for the many in the 19th century, rather than calling out the cruelty of the Conservative government in cold, hard terms.
Okay, Asha, you're going to...
That's a statement, that one. That was a statement.
Okay, statement. Okay. So next up, Councillor Sargent.
Do you mind if I don't stand up, or do I have to?
You can sit, that's not a problem.
Okay. Part of when I was going to speak on this statement, I was hoping I was going to have replies to my 2 questions, but I haven't received them. So actually, some of the things I may be saying may not be true, but I don't know the answers to the questions that I asked. And the concern that I have about this is that it's an awful lot of money to spend that will benefit only certain parts of the city, because a lot of the libraries that the smaller libraries don't have kiosks, so they won't get the benefit of a replacement kiosk, because I can't imagine that those 35 kiosks are going to go into the smaller libraries, they're going to go into the bigger ones. And to be quite honest with you, to get payment by card in a library that's already staffed should not be our top priority. It's relatively small amounts of money. I mean, you can get one of those iZettle machines for nothing these days, and really be much more sensible to have a small handheld payment machine rather than spending a fortune on a new kiosk just to support payment, chip and pin and contactless. I do support the idea of the other, of having more access to Wi-Fi, but the problem is in my ward, in Lawrence Weston, they don't have a library, so where are they going to go to get this Wi-Fi? And actually what worries me is there's quite a lot of money to be spending that where when people in places like Lawrence Weston won't get the benefit, and a huge investment which I'm not sure is really that sustainable, because 7 years doesn't really sound like an awful lot of time to me, and it worries me because every time people buy a new car it seems to last less as long than the one previous one, and it just makes me think these machines will probably end up costing be needing to be replaced even sooner. And I thought we were supposed to be having a library strategy. I thought we were supposed to be developing a library strategy. So I don't understand why it appears we're putting the cart before the horse. We should be working out what we're going to be doing with our libraries before we start spending nearly £750,000.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so let's go on to public question. Oliver Fortune.
Over the excitement of Joe's brilliant statement yet. My question is quite long. Julie's you've got my question. Sorry. Here's your question. Right, no, I've got my question now, thank you. Right, I won't read the background information, I'll just go to the questions. So I agree with everything Joe said. I think it's a lot of money to spend on this project. And I would like to know what is the total amount in pounds that the council collects each year for chargeable items and issuing fines to library card holders? And does this amount of money make the costly installation of contactless payment technology worthwhile?
Asha.
Okay, so the library service income from overdue charges and hire of DVDs and CDs, etc., for the last financial year was just over £95,000. The self-service kiosks have become an integral part of our service delivery and are breaking down, and soon will not be compliant with finance and ICT changes. Most of our libraries rely on cash only, which is a poor offer to customers who have expectations of using contactless. The replacement of the self-service kiosks are essential as they are now the main system that library customers issue and return library items. They have become an integral part of our service delivery, are breaking down, and as I said, will soon not be compliant with finance and ICT changes. To support our libraries, we need to acknowledge its vulnerabilities and modernise the service as a community hub for the 21st century. Ensuring technology and access to libraries is in line with the expectations of modern communities is a key part of this. I am surprised that you have any reservations about this within the Cabinet paper, and as a self-styled library activist, I would expect you to welcome this report with open arms. This is yet another example of this administration's support for our libraries.
I do have a supplementary. As I said at the beginning of my statement, I do welcome investment in technology. I think that's a good thing, but I question the motivations behind it. I do think that the fact that you've got the corporate strategy aim to reduce the size of the council to work effectively in the report is very, very alarming. That really genuinely sent shivers down my spine to see that in a report about renewing technology in libraries. My supplementary question is, picking up again on what Joe said, are you planning to install this technology into the smaller libraries that currently don't have any kind of self-service points?
Well, I could go on to Joe's question because you asked about that. So if you wanted to oblige me, I can list all the libraries that the technology is going in.
Well, you just give Asha, just give a list of the libraries. And
I am going to give you the list of the libraries.
It's very short library. Yeah.
So the libraries are, they'll go in Central, Bedminster, Bishopsworth, Bishopston, Clifton, Fishponds, Hartcliffe, Henbury, Henleys, Hallfield, Junction 3, Knoll, Redland, St George, Sea Mills, Stockwood, Westbury, Whitchurch, Wick Road and Southmead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks very much. Can I offer this up to any other Cabinet members for comment?
Oh, no.
Oh, Joe, you got a question?
Joe had a question. Joe had a question.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
So you've answered my first question about where. Sorry, I think it's my second question actually about where the kiosks are going to go, and I'm not at all surprised by where they're going to go. You're not at all surprised about where they're not going either. What I would say, what I would like to ask, I'd like you to answer my second question about the unit cost of a kiosk so that we know how much we're paying for people to be able to use chip and pin in libraries that are already staffed. I appreciate that there are 3 libraries with extended hours, but at the moment that is all we have really where we could justify the need to spend a lot of money on replacing these kiosks. So I'd like to know what the unit cost of a kiosk is, please, and then I'd like to ask my supplementary questions.
It's £12,000 a kiosk.
Okay, so can I have my? I'm going to ask my supplementary question. Yeah, I mean, do you not see my point about the need for us to be supporting the libraries where there is potential to provide a library service in an area that doesn't already have one, and the smaller libraries? For example, Lawrence Weston, in which there is going to be a community hub built, and we keep talking about supporting community hubs. So I'd like to know how I can go about accessing the same technology that you're proposing for all the bigger libraries, bearing in mind we don't have them in Avonmouth and Shirehampton either, whose future is somewhat uncertain because they don't have kiosks and they are reliant on people. I just want to know how I can go about getting a kiosk and a tagging station for a new library space in Lawrence Weston.
I think at the appropriate juncture because at the end of the day we are still quite a way away from developing that community hub, but I don't see that we can't have a discussion about putting one of the kiosks into the new community hub when it's completed. It's £12,000, so I'm sure we can find £12,000 to put a new hub into Lawrence Weston.
Yeah, and I think as we go into an election year as well, Joe, it'd probably be good to really be celebrating what we have achieved as other authorities around the country have not achieved the scale of library protection that we have. But let me offer it up to any other Cabinet members for comment on this one. Okay, so in lieu of that, let me go back to you, Asha, to take the decision, which I fully support.
Thank you. So in making this decision, I have taken into consideration the equalities relevance check in the report. And in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you.
So let's go on to agenda item 11, environmental offences, fixed penalties, England Regulations 2017, increased in fixed penalty. Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Marvin. So today, Cabinet is being asked to approve increasing fixed penalty charges for certain environmental offences, removal of the early payment rate for certain fixed penalties, and the introduction of a new fixed penalty for the domestic duty of care. Bristol City Council's annual Quality of Life survey highlights that litter, dog fouling and other street scene issues are of particular concern to Bristol residents. According to our 1516 Quality of Life survey, nearly 3/4 of people who responded identified street litter as a problem. Over 3/5 of residents felt that dog fouling was a problem in their local area, and 30% of respondents identified antisocial graffiti as a problem. These issues can be more pronounced in the city centre and some of the more deprived areas of Bristol. For example, in the 1516 Quality of Life survey, while 30% of respondents identified antisocial graffiti as a problem across the city, that rose to 47% in the city centre and over 60% in Ashley Ward. Groups such as Keep Britain Tidy have noted that deprived areas tend to suffer the most from poor local environmental quality, and that those living in more deprived areas are less likely to feel satisfied with the appearance of their local area compared to those living in more affluent areas. Therefore, the proposals outlined in the Clean Streets Plan to take a more robust approach to tackling street scene issues are viewed as being of overall benefit to people with protected characteristics. The approach adopted in the Clean Streets Plan emphasises education and community engagement, but alongside a more robust approach to enforcement. The Mayor has made a pledge that Bristol will be measurably cleaner by 2020, and the Clean Streets Plan, which underpins the pledge, is designed to change the behaviour of people in Bristol in order to reduce litter, dog fouling, fly tipping, graffiti and other environmental crimes. This will be done by sending a clear message, cleaning up the city, and by a robust zero-tolerance approach to enforcement. Although the cleanliness of the city has improved in many parts, more work needs to be done, particularly in relation to behaviour change. An independent environmental quality survey completed in November found that Bristol needed to do more to tackle litter, fly posting, and graffiti. Environmental crime has a significant and wholly detrimental impact on the well-being of our residents and the city's visitors. Although between 1617 and 1718 there was a reduction in the number of fly tip incidents of over 12%, that's from 9,356 to 8,206, the cost of environmental crime to the city remains high. In 1718, those 8,200 reports of fly tipping made to Bristol Waste Company cost over £390,000 to remove. Each fly tip, therefore, costing about 50 quid to remove and enforce. In the same year, we spent £100,000 on removing graffiti. That's real money that we all pay. I believe that removing early payment rates and increasing the penalty rates for certain offences sends a clear message. Returns generated from fixed penalties will resource environmental improvements as part of the Clean Streets strategy and in agreement with the executive member. Jargon alert. The Environmental Offences Fixed Penalties England Regulations 2017 came into effect on the 1st of April 2018, increasing rates for fixed penalties payable in respect of certain environmental offences. The change in legislation automatically increased the rates of some fixed penalty notices from the 1st of April 2018 to a default level set by the legislation. It is within the discretion of the council to not discount the penalty in the event of early payment. 1 year after these legislative changes, we have reviewed the penalty rates and propose a number of changes, either to increase the penalty charge or to remove an existing early payment rate. The current and proposed penalty rates are detailed in Appendix A of the report. I should point out that there is no proposal to increase the penalty rate for littering or to remove the reduced rate for early payment in relation to that offence. The Domestic Duty of Care Fixed Penalty Environmental Protection Act came into force from 7th of January 2019. This enables local authorities to issue a fixed penalty notice to a person who has failed to comply with the duty relating to the transfer of household waste. I'm sorry, that was another piece of jargon. Perhaps a bit of explanation would be in order. The domestic duty of care imposes a duty on an occupier of domestic property to take all available measures to make sure that any transfer of household waste is only to a person who has the appropriate permit or registered exemption issued by the Environment Agency. The duty of care requirement means that the householder must ask the person or business they transfer their waste to, or who arranges the transfer, for evidence of that authorisation, such as a copy of their waste carrier's registration or proof of their exemption registration. As this is a new measure, it is proposed to set the fixed penalty rate at £200. The rate will be reviewed in 12 to 18 months once it has been more widely publicised. More information about the domestic duty of care and the responsibility of householders is detailed in Appendix A. The Clean Streets Publicity and Communications Plan will include a campaign to highlight householders' responsibilities when making private arrangements to dispose of domestic waste, as well as highlighting low-cost or free options for getting rid of unwanted household goods. Plans to focus messages to more deprived areas of the city are detailed in the Equalities Impact Assessment, which can be found in Appendix E. Fixed penalties relating to dog fouling and dogs off leads are governed by separate legislation and are already set at the highest level currently available. Making the streets of Bristol cleaner is one of the key objectives of the 2017 to 22 corporate strategy. The strategy says that we will put Bristol on course to be run entirely on clean energy by 2050 and introduce a safe, clean streets campaign. The Clean Streets campaign will be a main focus to help us improve the cleanliness of the city and focus our resources on the areas of highest need. The Clean Streets campaign includes developing this robust approach to environmental enforcement that these proposed changes demonstrate. So, in short, the recommendation is that Cabinet approve the increase to the fixed penalty charges as set out in the table on page 122 of the papers, approves the removal of the early payment rate for certain fixed penalties as set out in the table on page 122, approves the introduction of a new fixed penalty for breach of domestic duty of care of £200, and notes that that new penalty rate will be reviewed in 12 to 18 months' time.
Thanks, Steve. So let's go on. We've had two questions that you have a chance to respond to. The first is from Oliver Fortune.
Thank you. Right, the Clean Streets campaign, in my opinion, seems to be focused solely on correcting the behaviour of the public, rather than the far more damaging behaviour of the manufacturers of the kinds of products that are packaged in the excessive amounts of plastic and cardboard which end up littering our streets. For that reason, I am sceptical of the campaign and don't feel that it addresses the root causes of the problem. With that in mind, what is Bristol City Council doing, if anything, to work with Keep Britain Tidy, mentioned in this report, and other relevant organisations to lobby central government into implementing interventionist policies to force manufacturers to use less packaging, and that would then keep our streets clean and save the environment from the perils of plastic and other disposable materials?
Steve.
Thank you. Thanks, Oliver. There are three elements to the Clean Streets plan: volunteerism, improved enforcement against offenders, and the way Bristol operates and manages waste in the city. For example, investing in the 110 compactor or smart bins that are going up around the city. We met with the CEO of Bristol Waste and the top team last Friday. We want to broaden the scope of their leadership in the city, not just about collections. It's about leading the city to minimise the generation of waste in the first instance, including plastics and packaging. In the second instance, it's increased recycling, increased reuse, and make waste useful using the energy generated. We'll be giving Bristol Waste a seat on the Environment Board we're launching and tasking to set out the city's aims and environmental standards every year up to 2050. The Chief Executive of Keep Britain Tidy will be coming to City Hall on the 23rd of May to discuss what more can be done to improve the cleanliness of the city and how best to continue to pressurise government to give cities the powers we need to shape the way businesses and other organisations operate in the city, so that we can have a predictable and meaningful plan to reduce waste. I've got to say that asking people to not litter or clear up after themselves isn't demonising people. This is just asking people to be responsible citizens and act in a way that most people already do. Bristol City Council and Clean Streets has continued to support Keep Britain Tidy and has just held its Great Bristol Spring Clean, which saw over 70 community cleanups happening in Bristol over the last month.
Okay, Okay, well, thank you for
Thanks,
that.
Steve. Would you like a supplementary,
Yes, I have.
Oliver?
I mean, it's very interesting to hear all of that, but you haven't answered the question. The question is, what are you doing, if anything, to lobby the government to pass legislation to reduce the amount of packaging that ends up littering our city? That was the question. You haven't answered the question. With regard to your point about demonising, when you go onto a bus or you walk through Broadmead and you see these quite aggressive, intimidating enforcement officers being quite forceful with people, I would say that that is demonising. But anyway, my supplementary question is, as I've said before, this scheme merely pays lip service to citizens who complain about litter, which is why we only see the enforcement officers I just mentioned in central areas. Why aren't these enforcement officers in the affluent areas or the suburbs of the city? Why do we only see them in central areas?
Steve,
Well, I have answered those
You haven't
questions.
at all.
I have answered those questions.
Well, you can...
Oliver, do you want to just let Steve come back? Otherwise it won't work. Thanks.
I have answered those questions. The Chief Executive of Keep Britain Tidy, to repeat myself, will be coming to City Hall and discussing what more can be done. We have engaged with government. We do engage with government. One of the jobs of the City Office is to engage with industry and the commercial sector to promote the things that we want to see. As regard, I can't let a comment about overly vigorous enforcement officers go without comment. I'm not going to have that. These are enforcement officers who do a difficult job that most people would choose not to do, and all they're trying to do is to get people who aren't complying with the law to do so, to do what the majority of citizens do as a matter of course and routine. I won't see our hard-working enforcement officers I will not see hard-working enforcement officers who are being charged with that role by us. I will not see them traduced.
Oliver, final question.
I'm still waiting for the answer to my supplementary. Why don't we see these enforcement officers who are so wonderful and behave so impeccably in suburban areas? Why do we only see them in the centre?
As the new enforcement regime comes into place, one of the things that I would expect is that they would initially target areas of high footfall and where compliance is worst. So I would expect to see them in the city centre to begin with, because that way, this is about, as I said earlier, this is about sending a message, and they get an opportunity to interact with more people and more frequently in the city centre in the early days. And as well as having that immediate high-level impact, the people that they interact with in the city centre then go home and take the message with them. Having done that, after the initial high-impact events in the city centre, I would then expect them to go more widely around the urban area. And I hope that you'll come back and remark on that in a statement once you've seen it.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so can I ask any other cabinet members if they have any comment on this? Anna?
Just make a brief comment to say that I really welcome this, and I welcome the fact that it is not just a one-off thing, talking about fining people. It's actually within a massive piece of work. It is on the doorstep, and I'm sure my fellow councillors from any party will agree, it is a guaranteed thing that I would say virtually every house comments on: littering, fly tipping and dog mess. This is not particularly glamorous, the life of a councillor. Those are the things you spend most of your time dealing with. And I can genuinely say, because I know from the amount of time I'm contacted about this in my own ward, that the vast majority of people do not drop litter and therefore will massively welcome this. And I think that you've dealt with that really well. I know because Bristol Waste met with me about 2 weeks ago to talk about the education programme they put in place. So this is not about them just finding people and not doing anything else at all. They do a massive piece of work right across the whole area of things that we deal with, and I absolutely welcome this, and I feel completely confident that I speak for most people in Bristol when I say that.
Thanks, Anna. I'm going to say something again in a minute, but Don, real apologies. I missed out your question.
No problem. Yes, absolutely. The residents of my ward will welcome this. Contrary to a previous questioner, this is not addressing the behaviour of the public here. It's addressing the abuse of the public and the citizens of Bristol by criminals. And if you live on a humble little road like mine, it's the last straw you need if you haven't got much money to have somebody come from outside or the other end of the city with a truckload of rubbish and tip it on the park next to your house. Everybody, except a few criminals, is disgusted by that, and everybody wants it. And my question is could you please extend the work of the enforcement officers out to the areas, out to the secondary retail areas, Shirehampton, Lawrence Weston, Avonmouth, and the more the better, and you'll have the support of 99% of the people there when you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Look, there's no doubt that we have to expand work across the city. We've had the high impact initial phase now. We have to aim to provide a citywide enforcement service. We use data and intelligence from councillors, citizens, colleagues to inform our weekly tasking. Inevitably, resources do tend to be focused on the high footfall areas, whereas the highest concentration of environmental crime. It's not possible to have enforcement officers in all areas of the city at all times, and so we rely on reports from councillors and citizens to inform our priorities. There are a series of councillor briefings in May when we welcome feedback about priorities so that we can make best use of the resources we have. The new enforcement contractor, 3GS, started on the 5th of February. There's been a period of getting established, and they will now be patrolling right across the city. Neighbourhood services will inform councillors on a regular basis of the enforcement activity happening in their wards.
Okay, I am sorry, so because I dropped out. Did you have a supplementary? No. Okay, so I had one from Asha. You had a...
No, it was just following on from Steve's point, because I think now for the last 2-3 months, neighbourhood services have actually been sending through to every single councillor information and data on enforcement, number of fixed penalty notices, etc., etc. So we do have that information. We are reviewing it on a regular basis, and I think the reality is, of course, we're only going to target those areas where there is high footfall. And I will give an example. A few months ago, I was visiting a friend who lives in Stoke Bishop, and I realised walking from their house to the bus stop, not a drop of litter anywhere, but then there was hardly anybody because everybody drives in and around that area. So it will only be in those areas where there are high footfall and lots of shopping. So Ashley, Central, areas like Bedminster and even areas of Clifton will all need to have additional enforcement happening, because that is where the footfall is. That is where all the bad habits are happening as well, because not everybody, even in the better parts of the city, are adhering to litter, keeping their litter or putting their litter in bins.
Steve.
Yeah, I'd just like to relate an anecdote about one of our enforcement officers. We actually had someone who was issued with a fixed penalty notice write in and commend the enforcement officer that gave him the notice on his behaviour and how right he'd been to issue the notice. So these people who were terrorising the streets, they're actually not doing it. Even the people that are being fined recognise what a good job they're doing. I just wanted to say that before you invited me to make a decision.
Thank you. I will hand back to you in a second, but I just want to say, Steve, we met with the senior leadership team of Bristol Waste on Friday. One of the things we were doing was looking at was it 19 new recycling trucks as well, coming in at Euro 6, so the highest standard, in terms of impacting on air quality in the city. Again, we're the continuing job of transforming our fleet, compacting the recycling en route, meaning that they have to return to the depot less often, so not only are they more efficient, but actually they are having a lower impact. A whole range of things. There are a number of things to point out that we've made clear to them. One is that we don't want Bristol Waste to be seen, and I blogged about this, we don't want Bristol Waste to be seen or to see themselves as the organisation that comes around and simply picks up our rubbish after the fact. The relationship between a city and its waste is one of the fundamental decisions facing cities all over the world right now. So we have invited them, we have asked them and challenged them to really begin to step up into the fullness of their leadership role. And that means becoming very proactive, busybody organisation. So they should be speaking into the National Health Service, universities, the police service, big employers in the city, our schools, and offering that service on a number of fronts. One is minimising waste in the first instance. Like we said, we should be convening our supermarkets, our retail outlets. How do we reduce waste? And for one is about existing practice, but also what's the Bristol message that goes through the other core cities as well, with the M8 into government about the powers we need at the city level. And at the back end, speaking into everything that goes around in Bristol, from our new city design to regeneration, to make sure that the way we put the city together both minimises waste and makes waste management easier, and where it can access waste being turned into energy and so forth. So we really asked them to really step up on this, and I think it's a challenge that they seem to be relishing, and one that we'll certainly be pushing them on. But Steve, can I, so it's a whole systems approach we're taking as well as individual behaviours. Steve, can I ask you to hand back to you now to take the decision which I support?
Thank you, Marvin. In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities relevance check in the report, and in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate your leadership on this. Next on, we're on agenda item 13, agenda item 12, food and beverage contract. Wouldn't want to leave that one out, Craig.
No, it's very important. Yeah.
I'm going to hand over to you, Craig.
Thanks. I'll be really quick, actually. So in February, our contracts for food and beverage at our various historic assets expired, and we've been operating on an ad hoc basis since then. We also set the events team a pretty ambitious income target from the various historic buildings, City Hall, Council House, Old Council House, Mansion House, etc. And so this new contract will allow us to benefit from royalties on food and beverage offer at the various events that we put on. So it just ticks a number of boxes, actually. So I'm just here to ask Cabinet to approve for us to go out to procure a new contract for food and beverage on various venues.
Thanks very much, Craig. One statement received. Oh, no, there wasn't. Oh, no, sorry. No statements received on this. No questions. Any comments from Cabinet? No, okay. Let me hand back to you, Craig, to take the decision which I fully support.
In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities relevance check in the report. In terms of the decisions we made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Craig. Next up, agenda item 13, Building Practice Capital Programme Budget Allocation 1920. Craig, you again.
Again, I'll be really quick. This is just detailing how we're going to spend the 1.65 million from within the Building Practice Capital Programme budget, which was allocated earlier in the year. There is a huge list. I'm not going to read through the list. It's there for your enjoyment.
Okay, we had one statement on this one. That's Don.
Yeah, thank you. The Allotments Forum, which I'm a member of, really welcomes the 97,000 capital investment in water troughs and the other measures are necessary because to isolate the troughs from the mains water as part of the law now because of Legionella and everything, you have to put like double valves underground. So there's £97,000 investment to enable us to continue to have water provided at many of the sites. It's not a trivial thing. It actually enables thousands of less able people to be able to take up and continue gardening because they can't drag the water over there and just can't have this hobby and this form of exercise if they don't have that water. So, and there's a really strong tradition of allotment keeping in Bristol, and it's a much overlooked public health intervention which has stood the test of time, and it deserves more attention, and I thank you for this bit of attention that you've given it and this sum of money. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, I mean, I've rushed over it, but there's loads of good things actually that we'll be spending money on, like a new roof for Eastern Leisure Centre, for example, or filling in air raid shelters in school playgrounds. You know, there's lots of things there that need to be done and that are good, and the allotments is another case in point. So thanks for your comment.
And thank you for raising the role of allotments as well, Don.
Yeah.
You see, a number of big questions facing the city where it just shows there's 1,000 things we're trying to get done that will make a contribution to someone's life somewhere, and this is one that perhaps doesn't get the attention it deserves. Craig, any cabinet members like to comment on this? Okay, well, let me hand back to you, Craig, to take the decision which I support.
In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities relevance check in the report. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks, Greg. Let's move on to agenda item 14, Hengrove Park, the proposed relocation of St Bernadette's Rugby Club and 21st, that's the Gladstone Scout Group. And Paul, you're doing this one.
Thank you, Marvin. I'm really excited about this report here today. It's one of those which I feel is a huge win-win. I mean, bringing a sporting facility, new community facilities into Hartcliffe, onto a site which is, you know, pretty much derelict and run down at the moment, is a huge boon for that community. And also for the rugby club, providing them with, you know, new facilities, state-of-the-art facilities, which will hopefully ensure that as a going concern that they are sustainable into the future as an organisation, with the quality of the development they're getting, which obviously includes the changing rooms, but will also undoubtedly include a bar, which is what sustains a lot of rugby clubs, believe it or not. And so this has been obviously facilitated by the development, the forthcoming development of Hengrove Park, which is the next item on the agenda. Also, we're also in talks with the Scout Group about them also having a brand new facility. We're just hammering out with them where is the best location for that. But again, you know, another, you know, investment in youth facilities within the area, which I think will be incredibly important. I commend the report to the Cabinet.
Thanks, Paul. So we have two statements. First from Dave Redwell. Dave?
Actually, Marvin, there's two statements, but one is 15 and one is 14. They've been transposed by your officers, not myself. So I'll deal with the ones with the rugby club. I mean, basically, it's about access. That is where the site is now, where people go and use that site. Obviously, there's a need for public transport access. Moving it to Hartcliffe, it's 1.6 of a mile, I believe, for people to walk and to commute. I noticed nothing in the report about accessibility. This is some of the poorest part of the city region. These people don't have clear access to cars. This is the social deprivation, and therefore we must make sure, when the planning application went through on this, which got thrown out, a lot of it was about accessibility, Mr Mayor, and I think it's very important that the officers, before they come back with what I welcome is a new Whitchurch Garden Village or Hengrove Garden Village, Paul, that we do deal with the access issues, because we need a metro bus stop somewhere near Banfield, so at least get them somewhere near Hartcliffe. We have done some research in some of this. There's a lot missing there at the moment, And I think these issues do need properly addressing when you come back for the bigger picture. And that's my point really. It's very important to keep green space, very important to have access to green space. In a very crowded, congested city region, green space is very important. But we do welcome the development being done properly. We do welcome new facilities support. But I do ask that the transport officers pick this one up and make sure that public bus services, which are being cut in this area by WECA and the WECA mayor, are fully addressed when we go forward. I'd like to see a 106 agreement or a seal issue to deal with this. I will make a further statement on general principles in the next one. Sorry, it's been transposed to the officers, not by me.
No, thanks, Dave. Well, sorry about apologies for that. There's a statement. I mean, Kai, Paul, did you have any come back on it? You don't have to.
Yeah, I'll come back on that. I actually think David's wrong on this one. I mean, I took my son to rugby for 2 years at St Bart's. Nobody ever went there on public transport because half of your matches are away anyway. Actually, people either walk or drive to the rugby matches that they go to and the rugby games that they go to. We're actually moving the facility from an area with high car ownership to an area with low car ownership. So we're actually making it more accessible to people who haven't got access to private transport. So I know it's important for David to sort of shoehorn in something on buses on every agenda, but actually on this one, I think he's got it completely wrong.
Well, it was a statement, Dave, so you don't have a comeback here, but I'm sure you can have a chat with Paul afterwards, right? Okay, so you didn't have another one on there, Dave. We'll pick that up in a minute. Can I offer it up to other cabinet members? Helen, you had something to say?
Well, as the one of the 3 councillors in the ward where this facility is going to be placed, we're incredibly excited about it and just want to have that conversation to make sure that the focus isn't just the rugby and the bar in a way, but that it opens that facility and the chance of participating in sport and youth activities to lots of other new people. And I'm sorry to have to agree with Paul, Dave, but you are wrong on this one, because where St Bernadette's now is much further from a bus route than it's going to be. The bus goes right past, the 76 goes right past where the new facility will be. And I think the chance of being able to excite young people about the opportunities that there are from participating in sport and in rugby specifically, it will be a kind of a new constituency, small c, for the club. And I think that that's really good, because in all the years that I've represented Hartcliffe, what we've tried to do over and over again is to think of things which will draw people into the area, rather than it being an area that most people don't think of going to. And this will be a fantastic facility. It's a very underused, since White House School was closed, a very underused space with the fields. At the moment, you can see giraffes grazing in the grass there because it's so overgrown. So it will be a brilliant addition to Hartcliffe, where we've lost so many, particularly young people's facilities. So I can't wait to have those conversations with the people behind the project.
Thanks, Helen. Any other cabinet members?
I just wanted to say, one of the things I really like about this bid is that, obviously this has been an ongoing negotiation, but what's important is that the communities and the organisations themselves have been kind of engaged right from, so we're not imposing, it's something that they want. We're delivering to kind of their agenda and the community's agenda. So, yeah, good on you for this one. So, yeah, I welcome this. I look forward to visiting it when it's done.
I hope too, interestingly, as you make the point, when we hosted Bristol Bears here just a couple of weeks ago, it's just a fantastic club for the city, actually, and what Pat Lamb's done with the culture of the club as well, and its commitment to the city is one that's really inspiring. One of the points made by one of the players was about how English rugby in particular begins to attract more people from working class backgrounds, and that's not the usual. When I went to Swansea University, it seems like a lot of the English students that played were quite posh, to be put it mildly. It was in South Wales that they tended to come from working class backgrounds, and that was a challenge we want to take on. So even I see a glimmer of hope here in as we grow that working relationship with the rugby club to use these outlets into a wider range of communities to make sure that we're drawing on the full range of talents from all of our communities for our sports clubs. But Paul, let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support.
Thank you, Marvin. In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact assessment in the report, and in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Paul. So let's move on to agenda item 15, disposal strategy for the regeneration of Hengrove Park. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, the item contains an exempt appendix. Exempt appendices contain information that is commercially sensitive or legally privileged, and I can confirm that Cabinet members and members of the relevant Scrutiny Commission have had access to this ahead of the meeting. If Cabinet members want to discuss the exempt appendices, we will have to move into an exempt session. So please indicate if you'd like to do that any time. But in lieu of that, let me hand back to Paul, who will introduce this report.
Thank you, Marvin. There are basically three ways that councils are directly involved in delivering new housing. One of them is council housing through the housing revenue account, and we'll certainly be doing some of that on Hengrove. Some of it is through setting up a company, as we have with Gorham Homes, and we've had very successful set of applications in on the closing date on Friday for the two sites we've allocated to that. This is the third way, which is basically a joint venture directly with the council. Now, the benefits of this approach over, say, the Gorham Homes approach is that with Gorham Homes, we can't insist on anything over and above the minimum standards set out within our planning policies. In terms of this mechanism, where we do go through the European Journal process, OJU, we can actually require more through the development and have more direct control over the development than if we did it through Gorham Homes. So this development, the disposal strategy that's within here, is to say that we enter into a joint venture and we go out and find joint venture partners to actually deliver this project. Of course, it won't go without notice to members of the Cabinet that the project, when it went to planning, was refused planning permission recently. And we've been engaging with the local community over April. We had a very successful meeting on the 23rd of April, where we proposed some changes to the plan that went to Planning Committee, which I think pretty much were supported. The community suggested some other changes, which I think we can incorporate. They also suggested things that they said were changes, which were actually things that were already in the original planning application. And so, you know, some of that discussion was about making sure we had a common understanding of what was actually being said. So although planning was refused on the outline application, we are preparing a new application. Originally, we were intending for that application to go in this week, but to pick up some of the issues that have been raised by the community, particularly around issues such as drainage and how that's best handled and managed and designed into a park to ensure that the park is still accessible. We're going to take a little bit more time, and also to deal with some of those transport issues as well, particularly as dealing with the impact of the proposed development at Park View, and making sure that those proposals are considered alongside our proposals at Hengrove. So there is being prepared at the moment a new application. At the heart of that application is getting the balance right between a high quality public space and good quality housing. I think some of the proposals that we've seen as alternatives have a good quality public space, but poor quality housing. And actually, we want both within this development. I think also making clear that, you know, there will be significant number of jobs at Hengrove. You know, one of the issues that was raised at the planning committee was we were building housing and not employment. I think what might have escaped some people's attention is actually over the last 20 years, quite a lot of employment has gone in to Hengrove Park around leisure and our sports centre, as well as the commercial leisure facilities, our swimming pool, but also with the local hospital and the college there. We've also got commitment to build a new construction training centre. I think very often people look at the number of jobs. What I'm really interested in South Bristol is the extent to which we can develop people's skills. So they don't have jobs, they have careers. And they have careers which allow them to invest in the local community as well. In terms of community facilities, that was one of the areas where we were able, I think, to say so the aspirations of the local community could be met within the proposals that were put forward to planning committee before, and we're just having to work through those with them. So, you know, in terms of things like coffee shops and other facilities, there's also going to be a new community centre built within this development. Hopefully, we'll also be able to develop some housing for older people as part of this development. One member of the planning committee said one of the problems with the development is people having to drive to the cinema. Of course, there's a 14-screen cinema in Hengrove Park, so if they drove to it, it would take them longer than if they actually walked to it. But there's a whole range of discussions, including the location of the allotments, the protection of the trees, the size of the park, which I think we're making really good progress on. So we don't want to lose the momentum that exists in taking this development forward by waiting for the planning application. Obviously, any agreement will be dependent upon the council receiving a planning permission from the planning authority, but we believe that the proposals set out here give us the best way forward in terms of ensuring that quality of community as well as quality of housing.
Thanks, Paul. Can I just check, Dave? So we've had one statement on this from Clive, but Dave, did you have a statement in relation to this one? Right? Okay, would you like to do your statement first?
No, obviously, this is the one that I'm concerned about. Transport was an issue at that planning meeting. Public transport is not great to that area. We've been out and looked what's there now. We've got a metro bus route, as I said, doesn't call it Bamford at the moment. And we've also got a limited number of local buses in the form of the 92 that runs around Whitchurch and goes up towards Baines, and then a 376 on the main road. James Freeman met with Colin Moulton, a number of us, through the Transport Board to look at some of the issues of an access from the city out to Whitchurch. He came up with a plan to use part of the old rail formation through Brislington, not the bit up through Stockwood, for metro buses and future rapid transit. I hope that's on the table, Mr Mayor, because James is keen on that, to look at that option. It is a disused rail track at the moment, nothing on it. And also there's a possibility of sharing that with a car road and part of it as well. But we do need to get the transport right. Paul's right on the land of the need for employment. We don't want to put everybody on a bus or driving across to Aztec West or to Cribbs Causeway or to other parts of the city region for employment. We need to create employment in South Bristol, whether that's around this site or in the Baines bit of South Bristol. There's another 3,000 houses, which I do principally welcome around the Bath and North East Somerset bit of Whitchurch. Hope these two developments will be quite joined up. But transport's very important. We need to reduce the car dependency. We need to create something like a new garden village out there. It's not really a massive park. It's an old airfield, really, with a bit of parkland around it, which is very nice, but it was an old airfield, and still a lot of it is an old airfield. So transport's key to this. I hope the officers go back and discuss these issues, and we're seeking money from WECA to improve the transport elements, and also we're seeking a necessary seal money or 106 money to make sure that transport's fully integrated in the plan when it comes back, Paul. Welcome the progress. Thank you.
As ever, Dave, thanks for the contributions and the spirit with which you bring them. And I would say, again, with the Transport Board, make sure these things are continuing to drive in and that there is an active conversation between the Transport Board and the Homes Board as well. So this is being built into the way the city goes forward. But yeah, thank you. Clive, you've got a statement.
The planning application to come through, but I would like to give some positive words. I've been really impressed with how Paul and the officers have bounced back from being knocked down in February. There's a whole host of issues which it looks like you're on top of, and some even planning committee didn't dream of. So sounds like a good job. I commend Councillor Paul Smith for what looks like some very good forward and community thinking, and it's really important, of course, to get this development right and then built.
Okay, thank you very much, Clive. Any Cabinet members want to comment on this item? Helen? Yeah.
If I can, just briefly, both with my ward interest and because, as Paul said, we might be able to deliver some of the extra care housing on this site. I've been attending the meetings that Paul's referred to, and I think they've been very useful at clarifying what was in the original proposal, which some people had clearly misunderstood, but it's also been good at looking at retargeting or refocusing how the approach to the local neighbourhood concerns are. But this development does not stand alone. Paul's mentioned the development, which is, one that we're going to have to manage rather than be able to control at Parkview because of the permitted development rights that are had there, and it's going to be tricky because there's going to be a lot of people in a very small building in small flats. That's going to be difficult. The other thing is about making sure that the link between the Hartcliffe campus development and Hengrove Park, and that the people who live on Hartcliffe campus development use those facilities, because that Hengrove Park has been stop-start, hasn't it? All the investment that went in the noughties for the college, the hospital, the pool, I'm looking at Colin now in his old role in the RDA, the infrastructure that was put in, did not envisage that there then be a 10-year hiatus, partly because of the, economy crashing, between that happening and the rest of the development. So I think if people think that this isn't joined up, it is. There's been a gap, and we're probably in a better place now at making a more sustainable development than we would have been had it been developed at that time. And sorry, Dave, it's most unlike me to disagree with you, but you've already got 3 bus services that serve it. So the M1, the 75 and the 76, and the plans that we were looking at the meeting that Paul's referred to earlier mean that there will be a bus gate route through the park, so it won't just be the buses will come to the edge of it. So if you're trying to think about people being attracted to live there that won't need the private car to get around, this should be a model of it, even though it's not immediately adjacent to the city centre. And I think that that's what we want. We want there and at Hartcliffe campus to show people that sustainable developments are not just for the wealthy. That this is an area where everybody can aspire to live, and they're living in low carbon houses, low energy use, and that they're sustainably linked to jobs in other parts of the city.
Thanks, Helen. Any other Cabinet members to comment on this one? No, okay. Well, I'm hand back to you now, Paul, to make any final comments and take the decision which I support.
Okay, thank you, Marvin. Firstly, I endorse the comments that Helen has made, and one of the important things about this site is that actually it is possible to live there, to work there, and to go to your leisure activities all by foot. you don't actually need to travel. You know, we'll also be rebuilding the school as well. So everything that you could possibly need is there. Obviously, you know, if you want to go to a major museum or to the theatre or whatever, you come into Bristol, and we've got 2 metro bus routes coming to this site. So to suggest it's not well connected by public transport, to me, is like one of the most bizarre comments I've heard. But there was a lot of talk about accessibility at the residents' meeting, particularly about making sure that the cycle routes match into the wider cycle network, and also good pedestrian routes across to the shopping centre, which is on the old Imperial Park. So accessibility isn't just about public transport, it's about making it a good place for walking and cycling as well. But as I say, sometimes I think David just needs to be on the agenda because really this is not the right location to discuss about lack of public transport. I'd also like to thank Clive Stevens for his lack of support today. That's very welcome. And I'd like to conclude by saying, in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the consultation responses and the equalities impact assessment in the report. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Okay, so that's the end of today's Cabinet meeting. I want to thank our colleagues for attending. Our next Cabinet meeting is Tuesday the 4th of June 2019 at 4 p.m. at City Hall. And as I said, I'm sure these conversations could be picked up outside here as well. Thank you.